In the heart of the African savannah, there was a small village called Umuse, known for its wide farmlands, its tall palm trees, and the laughter of children that echoed every evening. But there was one person in this village who never quite fit in with the others. Her name was Adama. She was a middle-aged woman, with tired eyes that always seemed to be searching for something beyond what ordinary people could see. While most women in the village spent their mornings fetching water, pounding yam, or weaving mats, Adama could be found in the forest, whispering to trees. Yes, trees. Every morning before the sun rose high, she walked barefoot along the dusty path, carrying a small calabash in her hands. She would stop at the giant Iroko tree just outside the village, bow slightly, and begin to talk in a soft voice. From afar, it looked like she was having a full conversation with the bark, the leaves, and the roots. The villagers thought it was madness. Children laughed whenever they saw her, shouting, "Look, it's the mad woman of Umuse. She's talking to trees again." Women shook their heads, whispering to each other at the stream, "Poor Adama, her mind is gone. Perhaps the gods punished her." Even the men, while resting under the shade after farming, mocked, "What wisdom can trees give? Can they tell her where to find food? Can they bring her a husband?" Adama heard all their whispers, but she never answered them. Instead, she smiled quietly, as if she knew something the rest of the village did not. One afternoon, the market square was filled with voices. Traders from neighboring villages had arrived, displaying their baskets of peppers, palm oil, and dried fish. In the middle of this lively noise, Adama passed by, her wrapper old and faded, her hair loosely tied with a piece of cloth. A group of young women burst into laughter. "Adama, will the trees buy your tomatoes today?" one mocked. "Or will the Iroko tree fetch you a husband?" Another added, sending the group into a fit of giggles. The words struck like stones, but Adama did not stop walking. She simply adjusted the calabash in her hand and continued towards the path leading to the forest. Her silence made the laughter louder, for nothing is more entertaining to a gossiping crowd than someone who refuses to defend themselves. But there was one person in the village who looked at Adama differently. Papa Okik, the oldest elder. His beard was as white as cotton, his back bent from years of farming, but his eyes were sharp like a hawk. Sitting by the village square one evening, he told the younger men, "You mock this woman because she speaks to trees, but do you know what the Iroko has seen? Do you know what the baobab remembers? A tree is older than any man. It holds secrets of generations. Only fools laugh at what they do not understand." The men chuckled and dismissed his words, but Papa Okek's warning lingered in the air like smoke from a dying fire. That night, Adama returned to her hut, a small clay dwelling at the edge of the village. The moon was full, casting silver light through the cracks in her roof. She sat by the fire and whispered to herself, "They laugh, but one day they will understand why I speak to the trees. One day the truth will reveal itself." Her eyes glistened with both sadness and determination. She reached into her calabash and sprinkled some dried leaves into the fire. A strange fragrance filled the room, one that carried both sweetness and mystery. Outside, the wind blew through the trees, making their branches sway as if they were nodding in agreement with her. The next morning, the mocking grew worse. Children followed her into the forest, throwing small stones at her and shouting, "Mad woman! Mad woman!" Villagers at the stream giggled, covering their mouths as she passed. But Adama kept walking. She stopped at a giant baobab tree, placed her hands gently on its wide trunk, and whispered, "Old friend, they do not see. But you and I, we know. Protect this secret until the time is right." Her voice trembled with emotion, as though she carried a burden too heavy for one woman alone. The gossip reached the ears of the village council. Elders sat beneath the great Udala tree, discussing matters of the people. One man spat on the ground and said, "This woman is bringing shame to Umuse. Outsiders laugh at us because of her madness. Should we not warn her to stop?" Another replied, "Perhaps it is not madness. Perhaps she communes with spirits. Do we really want to anger her?" Papa Okik raised his hand to silence them. Do not be quick to judge what you do not understand. Let her be. The gods reveal secrets in strange ways. But the younger elders were restless. To them, Adama was simply an embarrassment, someone who made their proud village a subject of mockery. By the end of that week, the entire village knew Adama's story. She was no longer just a woman. They called her the madwoman who talks to trees. Children used her name to scare each other. If you misbehave, Adama will come and make you talk to the Iroko too. Adama endured it all, but in the quiet of her hut, she sometimes wept. She placed her palms on her face and whispered, "How long, O spirits? How long will they laugh before they see?" Her tears fell like raindrops into the fire, sizzling softly as though even the flames pitied her. Yet, even in her pain, she did not stop her daily visits to the forest. Every morning and evening, without fail, she spoke to the trees. Sometimes she hummed songs, sometimes she cried, and sometimes she simply listened, as though the trees spoke back in voices only she could hear. The villagers thought this was proof of her madness. But what they could not see was that Adama carried a secret, a truth so powerful it could change the destiny of Umuse forever. And as the dry season slowly approached, the land itself would soon reveal why the woman who spoke to trees was not mad at all, but chosen. The days in Umuse grew hotter as the dry season deepened. The streams that once danced freely now shrank into thin trickles, and the farmers wiped sweat from their brows as they tilled stubborn soil that refused to yield. Yet, in the middle of these struggles, the villagers still found time for one particular subject. Adama, the woman who talked to trees. Every corner of the marketplace buzzed with her name. At the stream, where women bent over with clay pots, laughter spilled like water. "Did you see her this morning?" one woman whispered. "She was bowing to a baobab tree, muttering like a priestess." Another replied, covering her mouth to hide her grin. The women giggled until their pots shook with water. Children were even crueler. They followed Adama as she walked into the forest, chanting, "Mad woman, mad woman," talking to the trees again. Some threw tiny pebbles, scattering before she could turn. Even the men, gathered beneath the idolatry after a long day on the farm, had their share of ridicule. "Instead of planting yams," one said, "she plants words in the forest. Let us see if those words will grow into harvest." The others burst into loud laughter, slapping their knees. Adama's name had become a proverb of madness in Umuse. But, while most mocked, a few began to notice strange things. One evening, as the villagers prepared to sleep, a young boy named Abina ran into the square breathless. His eyes were wide, his hands trembling. "I saw something," he gasped. "I saw the trees. They were moving." The elders scolded him. "Nonsense. Go home and sleep." But Abina insisted. The branches bent as if they were bowing to Adama. She placed her hand on the tree, and the leaves shook though there was no wind. The villagers dismissed him with laughter. "Foolish child," they said. "Madness is contagious. Stay away from that woman." But deep inside, unease began to stir. Adama, meanwhile, continued her secret rituals. Each morning, she poured palm wine at the roots of the Iroko tree. She whispered words too ancient for the villagers to understand. And sometimes she simply sat in silence, her eyes closed, listening as if the tree whispered secrets back into her soul. In those moments, the forest felt alive. Birds grew quiet, wings shifted, and even the air seemed heavy with mystery. The gossip, however, reached dangerous levels. The younger elders of the village called for a meeting. They gathered beneath the council tree, their voices sharp with anger. "This woman is shaming you Muse," one shouted. "Traders from other villages laugh at us because of her madness," another added. "If we do not stop her, she will curse us all." But the oldest elder, Papa Okik, shook his head. His voice was calm but heavy with warning. "You fools laugh, but you do not understand. The trees have lived longer than our fathers' fathers. They carry memories, and perhaps this woman has chosen to hear them." The others dismissed him. "Old man, your bones are weak, and so is your mind. Leave us to decide." A vote was called. The majority agreed. Adama would be warned. If she continued, they would drive her from Umueze. The next morning, as the sun rose like a burning drum in the sky, Adama walked through the village with her calabash. Children jeered, women muttered, and men spat at the ground as she passed. At the edge of the square, 3 elders approached her. Their faces were stern, their voices cold. "Adama," one said, "we have tolerated your madness long enough. You bring shame to this village. From today, you must stop speaking to trees. If not, we will cast you out." The entire square fell silent, waiting for her answer. Adama did not cry. She did not argue. Instead, she looked up, her eyes calm but burning with a strange fire. "You laugh now because you do not see," she said softly. "But the day is coming when you will beg the trees for mercy. On that day, you will remember that Adama warned you." Then, without another word, she turned and walked toward the forest, leaving behind murmurs of fear and laughter. From that moment, the villagers' gossip changed. Some still laughed. "She is mad, and madness speaks in riddles," they said. But others grew uneasy. What if her words are true? What if the trees carry power we cannot see? The children stopped following her into the forest. Women lowered their voices when mocking her. Men looked over their shoulders after making jokes. A shadow of fear began to settle over. Strange signs followed. One evening, the sky darkened suddenly, though the sun had not yet set. A great wind rushed through the village, bending roofs, scattering palm fronds, and slamming doors. But when it passed, not a single tree in the forest had moved. "It is the woman," the villagers whispered. "She is summoning spirits." Another day, a group of farmers returned from the forest pale and trembling. "We saw it," one stammered. "The tree, she talks that it glowed with light. We swear it." But when the others went to see, the tree stood as normal, silent, and still. The villagers grew restless. Fear spread like fire in dry grass. Papa Okik called the council once more. His voice shook with urgency. "I warned you. The woman is not mad. She is chosen. The signs are here. You must not cast her out, or this village will regret it." But the younger elders, proud and stubborn, shouted him down. "Old man, you fill us with fear. We are the leaders now. This woman is a danger, and dangers must be removed." The decision was sealed. If Adama did not stop, she would be banished. That night, Adama sat by the fire in her hut, her calabash. Beside her, she spoke to the flames. "They think I am mad, but the time is near. When the ground dries and the wells empty, they will know the trees hold the secret of life." Her face was calm, but her voice carried sorrow, for she knew the villagers would not listen until it was too late. The trees outside swayed, though there was no wind, as if they were mourning with her. By the end of the week, Umuse was divided. Half of the village wanted Adama cast out. The other half whispered in fear, wondering if she was a messenger of the gods. But one truth was clear. The gossip had turned into tension, and the tension was about to erupt. The dry season grew harsher. the wells sank lower. Crops began to wither. And the people who once laughed at Adama now looked at her with suspicion, fear, and a question they dared not ask aloud. What if the mad woman carried the secret to their survival? The sun over Umuse grew merciless. Day after day, its fiery gaze beat down upon the cracked earth. The riverbeds, once alive with laughter and splashes, now lay dry like hollow scars upon the land. Wells that had quenched thirst for generations sank deeper into darkness until villagers pulled up empty calabashes. The dry season was always harsh, but never like this. Even the oldest elders shook their heads. In my youth, the sun was fierce. One muttered, but never this cruel. Yams shriveled before reaching maturity. Cassava roots turned brittle in the ground. The goats bleated hungrily, and chickens grew thin, their feathers falling like tired leaves. Children cried for water. Their lips cracked and dried out. The people of Umuse whispered one name more than any other Adam Ma Dod. At first, they cursed her. This is her doing. Women cried at the marketplace. Her madness is called a curse upon us. Men spat on the ground. We warned her to stop. Now see what has come. Children mocked no more. They stared wide-eyed whenever she passed, as though afraid her very shadow might bring misfortune. But as the days stretched into weeks, curses turned into something else, fear mixed with reluctant curiosity. For through all the suffering, Adama remained untouched. Her small farm at the edge of the forest, unlike the others, still bloomed with green leaves. Her yam mounds had not withered. Her clay pot was always filled with water, though no one ever saw her fetch it from the drying streams. The villagers whispered louder. How is it that her crops still grow? Where does she find water when even the streams are empty? Is she truly mad, or is she hiding something we cannot see? One scorching afternoon, a group of women, led by Kioma, crept toward Adama's farm. They pretended to be collecting firewood, but their eyes were sharp with suspicion. They stopped at the edge of the clearing and gasped out the earth beneath Adama's crops was moist, as though kissed by fresh rain. Leaves wide and green. A cool breeze whispered through her field, though the rest of the village burned under a stagnant sky. And there she was, her hands pressed against its trunk, her forehead bowed. She murmured words none of them could understand. Suddenly, the tree's leaves rustled though no wind blew, and droplets of water trickled down its bark, soaking into the soil at her feet. Women stumbled back in terror. Kioma covered her mouth. The tree gives her water. They fled back to the village, their firewood forgotten by evening. The tale spread like wildfire. The people gathered in small groups there, voices trembling with both fear and wonder. It is true. She speaks to trees, and they answer. No wonder her farm grows when ours die. She holds the secret of life in her hands. For the first time, the word mad fell silent on their lips. But fear breeds envy, and envy breeds anger. That night, a group of younger men gathered in the square, led by Afinyi, a hot-headed farmer, whose entire yam field had perished. His fists clenched, his eyes burned with fury. Are we blind? He shouted. While our children starve, this woman feasts. While our wells dry, she drinks. And you say she is blessed? No, she has cursed us to steal our blessings for herself. The men roared in agreement. Yes, she must be stopped. She is a witch. They vowed that the next day they would drag Adama from her hut and force her to reveal her secret or drive her out forever. But not everyone agreed. Old Papa Okik rose with his staff and faced the angry crowd. His voice shook with age but carried the weight of wisdom. You fools! Do you not see? The gods have chosen her. She holds knowledge we do not understand. Instead of driving her away, you should beg her to show you mercy. But Athene sneered, "Your wisdom is as old as your bones. Step aside, old man. Tomorrow we act." The crowd cheered, their anger louder than Papa Okek's warning. That night, Adama sat outside her hut, staring at the sky. The stars above shimmered faintly, but the moon was hidden by clouds. She placed her palm against the trunk of the Iroko tree and whispered, "They fear what they do not understand. But the drought will not end without sacrifice. Soon they will come, and when they do, may the trees bear witness." The leaves rustled gently, as if the tree comforted her. The next morning, the men stormed her hut. They banged on the door, shouting, "Come out, witch. Today, you reveal your secrets." Adama emerged calmly, her eyes steady, her hands empty. She did not flinch at their threats. "You call me witch because your eyes are blind," she said. "But I will show you what you cannot see." She turned and walked toward the forest. The men hesitated, but anger drove them to follow. Soon, the entire village trailed behind men, women, and children, curiosity outweighing fear. Deep inside the forest, Adama stopped before the mighty Iroko. Its roots twisted into the earth like the veins of the world itself. She raised her hands. "This tree is older than you muse," she declared. "It has seen droughts and floods, life and death. It holds the memory of rain. And because I listened, it revealed its gift." The villagers watched in silence, sweat glistening on their brows. Adama pressed her palm against the trunk. Her lips moved, chanting words older than memory. The tree shivered. Leaves rustled though no wind touched them. From its bark, droplets of water began to fall, first slowly, then in streams. The earth darkened with moisture, and a small pool formed at its roots. Gasps filled the air. Children rushed forward, cupping their hands, drinking deeply. Women dipped their calabash, tears streaming down their faces. Men stared in disbelief, their anger melting into awe. The tree had given them water. The villagers fell to their knees. "Adama, forgive us," they cried. "We mocked you, we cursed you, yet you carried the blessing we needed." But Adama's face was stern. "Water alone will not save you. The trees hold life, but only if you honor them. If you cut them without thanks, if you mock the gifts of the gods, the land will remain cursed. Only respect will bring balance." Her words hung heavy in the air. Papa Okek stepped forward, tears shining in his eyes. "I told you she was chosen. Listen to her, or we are lost." From that day, the villagers' laughter at Adama ceased. They built a small shrine at the foot of the Iroko tree, where offerings of kola nuts, palm wine, and prayers were laid each morning. Farmers began to whisper thanks to the trees before felling them. Children, once cruel, now bowed respectfully when they saw Adama pass. The drought slowly loosened its grip. Clouds gathered where once the skies had been cruelly bare. Their faces, weeping with joy. Adama did not smile, but her eyes softened. She knew the trees had accepted their repentance. Yet, in her heart, she carried a warning. She had seen visions whispered by the trees, visions of future generations who might forget again. But for now, Umuse was safe, and the woman once called Mad became the village's silent guardian, the keeper of secrets whispered only by the trees. The rains returned slowly, as though the heavens themselves were testing the hearts of the people of Umuse. At first, they came in small showers, little more than whispers on the thirsty ground. Then, with time, the skies opened in fullness, and the land once again drank deeply. Crops sprouted where there had been dust. The rivers gurgled like long-lost friends greeting each other. Goats and chickens fattened, and laughter returned to the village. But though life blossomed again, no one forgot the dark days of thirst, nor the woman who had endured their scorn and revealed their salvation. Adam Ma. The one they had mocked, the one they had cursed, the one they had called Mad Dot now. They called her Keeper of the Trees. Each morning, villagers would bring offerings to the great Iroko tree. Calabashes of palm wine, kola nuts split in reverence, woven mats laid at its roots. Children sat in circles around Adama as she spoke softly, teaching them songs that praised the earth and the skies, songs that spoke of rain and roots, of life and respect. The tree breathes so that you may breathe, she would tell them. The tree drinks so that you may drink. Forget this, and you will know suffering again. The children listened, their wide eyes filled with wonder. They no longer mocked her strange ways. They touched the bark of trees with gentle hands, whispering, thanks before plucking fruits or breaking branches. For the first time, the bond between man and nature felt alive in Yumuz. But harmony is a fragile thing. One day, as the harvest approached, Afinyi, the same man who had once led the charge against Adama, stood in the marketplace, his voice loud and bitter. Have we not given too much honor to this woman? He sneered. Is it not the rains from the sky that fed our crops? Why do we bow to her trees as though they were gods? The crowd murmured uneasily. Some nodded, emboldened by his words. Others frowned, fearful of questioning what it brought. Their salvation. Old Papa Okik shook his head gravely. You learned nothing, Ifeni. Did you not drink the water from her tree when your throat burned like fire? Did your children not survive because she listened when you mocked her? But Ifeni spat on the ground. We are men, not slaves to wood and leaves. If we need more farmland, why should we not cut the forest? Must we ask permission from trees? His arrogance spread like smoke, creeping into the minds of a few who had grown restless. Some men muttered that perhaps Adama's power was fading, that perhaps the drought had ended by chance. That night, Adama sat beneath the Iroko tree, her hands pressed against its ancient trunk. She whispered not in plea, but in sorrow. They forget so quickly. Their stomachs are full, so their memory grows thin. But you remember, don't you? The tree rustled, its leaves brushing against each other like a sigh. In the silence of the night, she heard its voice deep within her spirit. Child of earth, their hearts are fickle, but your work is not done. As long as you carry the secret, as long as you remind them, balance will remain. Yet, if they stray too far, the land will answer with silence again. Tears welled in her eyes. Then I will carry this burden, even if they mock me until my last breath. The years passed. Children grew into men and women. Adama's hair silvered, her back bent, but her eyes remained clear and sharp. She walked the forest paths daily, speaking with trees, touching roots, teaching those who would listen. Some villagers, grateful and faithful, followed her ways. Others, like Afinyi, continued to grumble, their greed forever at odds with the lesson she carried. But none dared harm her again, for even in their doubt, they feared the power of the trees. One season, when the Harmattan winds swept dust across the land, Adama fell ill. She grew weak, her voice faint, her steps unsteady. The villagers who had once mocked her now gathered at her hut, bringing herbs, food, and offerings, desperate to keep her alive. Children cried at her doorway, Mama, Adama, don't leave us. Who will tell us the stories? Who will speak to the trees? She smiled faintly, her wrinkled hand brushing their cheeks. My children, the trees speak to all who will listen. I was never their only voice. You must learn to hear them yourselves. The elders sat by her side, asking for her final wisdom. With the last of her strength, she whispered, Do not forget. The earth gives because it loves, but it can also take away. When you eat, remember the soil. When you drink, remember the roots. When you breathe, remember the leaves. Only then will you know peace. With those words, her eyes closed. A silence settled, heavy as stone. The villagers wept. their cries echoing through the night. The next morning, they carried her body to the foot of the Iroko tree. There, they laid her gently in the earth, covering her with soil and flowers. The villagers built no ordinary grave. Her resting place became a shrine. From that day, the great tree was no longer just a tree. It became a damask tree. Whenever drought threatened, people gathered there to pray. Whenever disputes arose, elders met under its shade. Children played in its roots, learning to treat it with respect. And when travelers came to Umuse, they were told the story of the woman once called Mad, who carried a secret that saved them all. Years turned into decades. Generations came and went, but the story of Adama lived on. Elders told it by firelight, their voices low and reverent. Mothers whispered it to children at night, warning them never to mock what they did not understand. And always, the story ended with the same words. They laughed at her. They called her mad. But when their thirst burned their throats, it was she who saved them. Never forget, the trees are listening. Thus, Adama's madness became her glory. Her sorrow became her strength. And her secret, the bond between man and nature, became the eternal lesson of UMUAZ. For though men may forget, the trees never do. As the days passed, whispers spread like wildfire across the village. Some called the old woman a witch. Others said she had gone mad, speaking to trees as though they were people. Children would run past her hut, laughing, pointing, and mocking. Yet, she never shouted back. She only smiled, touched the bark of the nearest tree, and whispered something no one could hear. But one evening, everything changed. The skies grew dark, and a violent storm struck the village. The winds tore at the thatched roofs, and the rain beat down so hard that even the strongest walls began to crack. Trees were uprooted, animals fled, and fear gripped every heart. The villagers, desperate and terrified, ran for shelter. That was when they saw the old woman standing calmly beneath the tallest tree in the square. As the storm raged, she placed her hands upon its trunk and began to chant in a language long forgotten. To the amazement of all, the wind seemed to bend around her, sparing the tree and those who huddled beneath it. When dawn broke, destruction was everywhere. Roofs were gone, fields were flooded, and many homes lay in ruins. Yet the hut of the old woman stood untouched, and the great tree she had spoken to remained firmly rooted, its branches sheltering those who had taken refuge under it. It was then that the villagers gathered around her, no longer mocking but trembling with awe. One of the elders stepped forward and asked, "Mother, what is the secret you carry?" The old woman turned, her eyes glistening with both sorrow and wisdom. "Long ago," she said softly, "our ancestors made a pact with the spirits of the trees. They give us shelter, air, and life. In return, we must honor them. But you forgot. You mocked what you should have protected. I was chosen to remind you." Silence fell. The villagers wept, ashamed of how they had treated her. From that day forward, the woman was no longer called Mad. Instead, she was revered as the keeper of the trees. People began to plant and care for the forests again, teaching their children to honor the bond between humans and nature. And though she never asked for recognition or reward, the old woman's name lived on as a legend. For she carried a secret greater than wealth, greater than power, the secret that trees themselves hold the memory of life, and those who listen to them will never be lost.